Today, you're going to improve your fluency in English by reading and listening to English at the same time. We're going to read a news article together, and this is the best method that you can use to become fluent fast. Welcome back to JForrest English. I'm Jennifer. Now let's get started.
First, I'll read the headline. Trump blasts electric vehicles in Michigan a day after Biden's picket line visit. Now, before we begin this lesson, I'll let you know that I reviewed a separate article about Biden's visit to Michigan, which came before Trump's visit. And I explain a lot of vocabulary that you'll see in this lesson, such as picket line. I don't want to explain that again, so I left the link to Biden's visit to Michigan in the description and the comments section. So you're welcome to pause this video and watch Biden's visit first so you can learn this vocabulary. Now with that, let's review some other vocabulary in this headline here, such as blasts. Here, blast is a verb, and you blast someone or something. In this case, he's blasting something, electric vehicles. And this is when you criticize, and you criticize severely. So a lot of criticism. Trump blasts electric vehicles in Michigan. He criticizes severely electric vehicles in Michigan. Now, the opposite of blast is commend. When you commend something, it means you praise it, you support it. So I hope you commend this video and you don't blast it. Of course, I don't want you to criticize this video. So you can put in the comments, I know we just started, but you can put in the comments, I commend this video. Hopefully you feel that way. But if you want to blast it, that is your right to do so. I just hope you don't, and I hope you commend this video. I commend this video. Put that in the comments. All right, so Trump blasts electric vehicles in Michigan. If you're not aware, in Michigan, they have a very large automobile industry. That's where most of the cars in North America are made. So that's why he blasts electric vehicles in Michigan. And this is a day after Biden's picket line visit. Of course, as I said, you can review this in my other lesson. Now, don't worry about taking these notes because I summarize everything in a free lesson PDF, so you can look for the link in the description. Let's continue. As his Republican rivals prepared to gather on stage in California for their second primary debate, Donald Trump was in Michigan. Okay, let's stop here and look at the verb gather on stage. When you gather, it means individual people come together. So it's another way of saying meet. We gathered to discuss the report. We met to discuss the report. Now, on stage is simply because this was during a debate and the candidates who are debating are on a stage, and then the audience is in the audience watching the candidates on stage. So the candidates gathered on stage and the audience watched that. Let's continue with the sentence. Donald Trump was in Michigan on Wednesday night working to win over blue-collar voters. So let's review that. Win over is a phrasal verb, and you win someone over. When you win someone over, you get their support or you get their approval. So if you go to a job interview or you're trying to get a new client, you want to win that person over. You want to convince them to offer you the job or work for you. So you might say, I hope this proposal will win over the client, will get the client to support you, approve you, and then therefore hire you. Now, in this case, Donald Trump is trying to win over blue-collar voters. Have you heard this adjective before? Blue collar. And then what's the opposite of blue collar? There's blue collar and there's white collar. It relates to the type of work that these people do. So blue collar workers, generally the work they do requires physical strength and physical skill, like an auto an auto worker, a plumber, a carpenter, a builder. Those would be considered blue-collar workers. A white-collar worker, the work they do more requires their mental skill, not necessarily their physical strength. And so those are generally people who work in offices. So Donald Trump is trying to win over blue-collar voters by lambasting President Joe Biden. Lambasting. Now, first, I'll note that there are two alternative pronunciations, bast or based. Basting or basting. The one I use, basting, lambasting, is the more common, but you may also hear in American pronunciation basting, lambasting, lambasting, lambasting. I recommend lambasting because it is more common. Now, what does this mean by lambasting President Joe Biden? Again, it's another way of saying criticize. By criticizing, and remember, what else did we learn? By blasting President Joe Biden. So criticizing. Notice here it's an ing, and that's because we need to conjugate our verb. We have a preposition, so we need the ing. By criticizing, by blasting, I'll just add that so you remember the other word we learned, blasting. I will note though, blasting is a lot more common than lambasting. And also notice, blast. So there's an L in blast, but here is not lamb blasting. No, it's lambasting. Basting. So remember, blast, but lambasting. Okay. By lambasting President Joe Biden and his push for electric cars. So his push for something. When you push for something, you demand that something repeatedly. So President Joe Biden and his push for electric cars. That could mean that he's demanding that us as the drivers drive electric cars over gas-powered cars. So he's pushing for electric cars to be widely used in public life. He's pushing for electric cars. So you can demand it, and you demand it repeatedly, or you simply try to make something happen. So if Joe Biden is pushing for electric cars, maybe he introduced a policy and he is trying to get everyone to support that policy as well. And the policy is that we're the general public, we're required to drive electric cars. As an example, the workers pushed for higher wages. So again, they could just repeatedly ask or demand higher wages. We want higher wages. We want higher wages. Or they really try to make that happen. So President Joe Biden and his push for electric cars in the midst of an auto workers strike. So again, this auto worker strike, that's covered in the other lesson that I prepared on Joe Biden's visit to Michigan. So you can learn more about that. The link is in the description. Now, in the midst of, that's, if this is the start and the end of the auto workers strike, the midst of is in the middle or somewhere in progress of. So it's not at the beginning, it's not at the end, it's in the midst of. You could also say, during, simply. Push for electric cars. Oh, sorry. The in belongs to the expression. So it's in the midst of something. Now, all of that can be replaced with during. Push for electric cars during an auto worker strike. Or you could even say amid, which is slightly more formal than during. But as you can see, it's a lot shorter. It only takes 4 letters instead of 4 individual words to say the exact same thing. During an auto workers strike, amid an auto workers strike.
Are you enjoying this lesson? If you are, then I want to tell you about the Finally Fluent Academy. This is my premium training program where we study native English speakers from TV, the movies, YouTube, and the news so you can improve your listening skills of fast English, expand your vocabulary with natural expressions, and learn advanced grammar easily. Plus, you'll have me as your personal coach. You can look in the description for the link to learn more, or you can go to my website and click on Finally Fluent Academy. Now let's continue with our lesson.
The Republican front runner's trip. So the Republican front runner is Donald Trump. Now, his trip comes a day after Biden. And I'll point out that a front runner is the person who is currently leading something, usually in terms of a competition. So imagine a race where all these people are running and they're competing in this race. And then there's one person who's leading, one person who is faster. He is the front runner. But you can use this for any competition, not just in a race or athletic, because here we have a political competition. In a job interview, there could be 5 candidates. Of course, there's going to be one, maybe even 2 front runners, 2 people or one person who is the strongest out of that group, who's more likely to get the job because they were able to successfully win over the interviewer. I wrote that definition, and here's an example sentence. We interviewed 5 applicants, and Tony is the front runner, so the one leading. His portfolio won us over, because you win someone over, and this is in the past simple. His portfolio won us over. The Republican frontrunner's trip, again, that's Donald Trump's trip, comes a day after Biden became the first sitting president in U.S. history to walk a picket line as he joined United Auto Workers in Detroit. Again, this is the topic of the other lesson I reviewed, so I'm not going to repeat that. The link is in the description. The union is pushing for, we see this again. And that's exactly the sentence I gave. The workers pushed for higher wages. And here it is. The union is pushing for higher wages. The only difference is I put mine in the past simple, and here we have it in the present continuous, because they're in progress now, is pushing for higher wages. So they're demanding it and they're taking action to accomplish this. Shorter work weeks and assurances from the country's top automakers that new electric vehicle jobs will be unionized. Okay, so they're pushing for more than one thing. They're pushing for 3 things. Let's talk about assurances. This is a noun, and an assurance, in this case plural, assurances. An assurance is basically a promise. It's a firm commitment. You may know the verb form, which is assure. I assure you that I'll drive you to the airport. So if I say this to you, you can feel relaxed because you know I'm going to take you to the airport because I assured you, which is saying I promised you. I gave you a firm commitment. I will do this. Now, this is the verb form, which, to be honest, is more commonly used. Now, if you use it as the noun form, assurance, you give someone your assurance. So that's why her matches she. She gave me, I'm the someone, and it's her assurance. The assurance, the commitment, the promise belongs to her. She gave me her assurance. Now, the word promise functions in exactly the same way. Here it's a verb, and here it's a noun, and you can give someone your promise as well. So that's assurances from the country's top automakers that new electric vehicle jobs will be unionized. So I assure you the new electric vehicle jobs will be unionized. That's what they want to hear. The dueling appearances. Dueling. Let's talk about this. Here, dueling is an adjective and it describes the appearances. Now, the word duel is a competition or a fight, and it's usually between 2 people. But in this case, it's an adjective describing appearances. An appearance is when you appear in public. So we have Donald Trump appearance, his appearance, and then we have Joe Biden's appearance. So when they both appear in public. Now, those appearances, they're in competition with each other. They're fighting each other. So the dueling appearances preview what will likely be a chief dynamic of the 2024 general election. So by describing this as a preview, it's saying that this is what we can expect in the 2024 election. Just like a movie trailer is a preview of the movie. It tells you what you can expect in the movie. So they're saying that these two appearances, Joe Biden in Michigan, Donald Trump in Michigan, this is what we can expect in the 2024 general election, which increasingly looks like a rematch between Trump and Biden. It's a rematch, which means they're matching again. They're competing again because they already competed against each other in the past. So it's a rematch. I wrote that definition. Now let's continue. Michigan is expected to again be a critical battleground state as both candidates try to paint themselves as champions of the working class. Now, generally, the working class, that includes both blue collar and white collar workers. In this case, the focus is more on blue collar workers because in Michigan, the main industry is the automotive industry, and people work mainly with their hands and their physical strength. So more so blue collar workers. A battleground state, well, it's in Michigan that they're going to battle. Of course, metaphorically, in the sense of they're going to compete against each other politically. They're going to debate. They're going to appear in that state. They're going to try to win over voters in Michigan. It's a battleground state. Now, if they try to paint themselves as, it's simply saying to describe themselves as or to appear as. So Donald Trump wants to paint himself as a champion of the working class. So he's working for them. He's there to support them and their needs. But Joe Biden also wants to be known as, to describe himself as a champion of the working class. So they're trying to paint themselves as, describe themselves, appear as. Let's continue. Trump's decision to skip another debate. When you skip something like a meeting, a class, a party, an event, it means you don't do it. You don't do it. So he didn't go to the debate. If you skip class, it means you didn't go to class, even though you had an obligation to do it. So if you say, oh, I skipped the meeting at work today, it means you were invited to the meeting. It was expected that you would attend the meeting, but you didn't attend the meeting. So I skipped the 9 o'clock meeting today because I was very busy with other tasks. So I wrote that definition for skip, and here's an example. I skipped the 9 a.m. meeting today because I was busy trying to win over the client. So your boss won't be mad at you for skipping the meeting because you had a very good reason. So Trump's decision to skip another debate comes as he maintains a commanding lead. This is a way of saying a big lead, a commanding lead in the GOP primary. Because remember, Trump is the front runner. Even as he faces 4 separate criminal indictments, and as his campaign works to pivot to the general election months before primary voting begins next year. Let's talk about pivot to. So pivot is a verb. So if I'm right here and I pivot, I turn or move in a different direction. That's physically what you do with your body for the verb pivot. So if you pivot your foot, you move your foot in a different direction. But we use this also to say that right now I'm working on this task and I'm going to pivot to this task. So it's you move in another direction, but in this case, it's your attention. It's what you're working on. So before he was involved in these criminal indictments that had all of his attention and focus, and now he's going to pivot. He's going to turn his attention to the general election. So he's going to shift his focus, turn his attention to, shift his focus. That's another useful expression. It means the same thing. I'll write that for you. To shift his focus to the general election. So you can use any one of these. Drake Enterprises makes automotive and heavy-duty truck components, including gear shift levers for semi-trucks, said its president Nathan Stempel, who noted a shift to electric cars would cripple him. Okay, I'm not too sure how this relates to what we were just talking about, but I think it's because of this part. He noted a shift to electric cars. So in this case, actually, a shift would mean the same as a pivot, because right now, the general public, we drive gas-powered cars. And if we shift to electric cars, we're going to pivot to electric cars. We're now going to drive electric cars. So you change from one to the other. So that's shift to. You could also say pivot to electric cars. Now, it would cripple him. It would cripple him. This is another way of saying it would destroy him. It would destroy. For example, COVID crippled many businesses. COVID destroyed many businesses. So this is a very useful alternative in your vocabulary. While Trump aides had said his audience would include several hundred current and former UAW members, this was the union, the auto workers union, and then this Drake Enterprises would be probably part of the union. That's why they're talking about him. And remember, both Trump and Biden want to win over these workers. So they want these workers' support. Now here, Trump aides. Aides is another word of assistance, and it's specifically used in politics, a political aide. They just use the word political aide instead of assistant, whereas assistant is most commonly used in offices, assistant. So while Trump assistants, Trump aides, had said his audience would include several hundred current and former UAW members, as well as members of plumbers and pipe fitters unions. These are, again, both examples of blue-collar workers. The crowd also included many non-union workers who support the former president. The former president, of course, being Donald Trump, because he's not the current president, he's a past president, so the former president. I wrote that information for you. Now let's continue. Some said they had been invited by people who did business with Drake. Remember, Drake was the enterprise here who said they would be crippled if there was a shift to electric cars. And remember, Donald Trump is there to blast electric cars. So by blasting electric cars, by criticizing electric cars, Donald Trump is trying to win them over. I wrote this example for you. Donald Trump is trying to win these blue-collar workers over by blasting electric cars. I'll read this again. Some said they had been invited by people who did business with Drake. Others said they had simply arrived at the factory Wednesday afternoon and been allowed to attend. And that's the end of the article. So what I'll do now is I'll go to the beginning and I'll read the article from start to finish. And this time you can focus on my pronunciation. Let's do that now. Trump blasts electric vehicles in Michigan a day after Biden's picket line visit. As his Republican rivals prepared to gather on stage in California for their second primary debate, Donald Trump was in Michigan on Wednesday night working to win over blue-collar voters by lambasting President Joe Biden and his push for electric cars in the midst of an auto workers' strike. The Republican frontrunner's trip comes a day after Biden became the first sitting president in U.S. history to walk a picket line as he joined United Auto Workers in Detroit. The union is pushing for higher wages, shorter work weeks, and assurances from the company's top automakers that new electric vehicle jobs will be unionized. The dueling appearances preview what will likely be a chief dynamic of the 2024 general election, which increasingly looks like a rematch between Trump and Biden. Michigan is expected to again be a critical battleground state as both candidates try to paint themselves as champions of the working class. Trump's decision to skip another debate comes as he maintains a commanding lead in the GOP primary, even as he faces 4 separate criminal indictments, and as his campaign works to pivot to the general election months before primary voting begins next year. Drake Enterprises makes automotive and heavy-duty truck components, including gear shift levers for semi-trucks, said its president, Nathan Stempel, who noted a shift to electric cars would cripple him. While Trump aides had said his audience would include several hundred current and former UAW members, as well as members of plumbers and pipe fitters unions, the crowd also included many non-union workers who support the former president. Some said they had been invited by people who did business with Drake. Others said they had simply arrived at the factory Wednesday afternoon and been allowed to attend.
Did you enjoy this lesson? Do you want me to make more lessons just like this? If so, put yes, yes, yes in the comments below. Put yes, 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 and I know you want more lessons. And you can get this free speaking guide where I share 6 tips on how to speak English fluently and confidently. You can click here to download it or look for the link in the description. And I recommend you watch this lesson right now. I know you'll love it.